Chapter 2. The agency by which Christianity was revived in England in the middle of the 18th century. Improvement of England since middle of 18th century, an undeniable fact. Agents in effecting the change, a few isolated and humble clergymen. Preaching, the chief instrument they employed. The manner of their preaching, the substance of their preaching. That a great change for the better has come over England in the last 100 years is a fact which I suppose no well-informed person would ever attempt to deny. You might as well attempt to deny that there was a Protestant Reformation in the days of Luther, a long Parliament in the time of Cromwell, or a French Republic at the end of the last century. There has been a vast change for the better. Both in religion and morality, the country has gone through a complete revolution. People neither think nor talk nor act as they did in 1750. It is a great fact which the children of this world cannot deny, however they may attempt to explain it. They might as well try to persuade us that high water and low water at London Bridge are one and the same thing. By what agency was this great change effected? To whom are we indebted for the immense improvement in religion and morality which undoubtedly has come over the land? Who, in a word, were the instruments that God employed in bringing about the great English Reformation in the 18th century? This is the one point that I wish to examine generally in the present chapter. The names and biographies of the principal agents I shall reserve for future chapters. The government of the country can lay no claim to the credit of the change. Morality cannot be called into being by penal enactments and statutes. People were never yet made religious by acts of Parliament. At any rate, the parliaments and administrations of the last century did as little for religion and morality as any that ever existed in England. Nor yet did the change come from the Church of England as a body. The leaders of that venerable communion were utterly unequal to the times. Left to herself, the Church of England would probably have died of dignity and sunk at her anchors. Nor yet did the change come from the dissenters. Content with their hardly won triumphs, the worthy body of men seemed to rest upon their oars. In the plenary enjoyments of their rights and conscience, they forgot the great vital principles of their forefathers and their own duties and responsibilities. Who, then, were the reformers of the last century? To whom are we indebted, under God, for the change which took place? The men who wrought deliverance for us 100 years ago were a few individuals, most of them clergymen of the established church, whose hearts God touched about the same time in various parts of the country. They were not wealthy or highly connected. They had neither money to buy adherents nor family influence to command attention and respect. They were not put forward by any church party, society, or institution. They were simply men whom God stirred up and brought out to do his work without previous concert, scheme, or plan. They did his work in the old apostolic way, by becoming the evangelists of their day. They taught one set of truths. They taught them in the same way, with fire, reality, earnestness, as men fully convinced of what they taught. They taught them in the same spirit, always loving, compassionate, and, like Paul, even weeping, but always bold, unflinching, and not fearing the face of man. And they taught them on the same plan, always acting on the aggressive, not waiting for sinners to come to them, but going after and seeking sinners, not sitting idle till sinners offered to repent, but assaulting the high places of ungodliness, like men storming a beach, and giving sinners no rest, so long as they stuck to their sins. The movement of these gallant evangelists shook England from one end to another. At first, people in high places affected to despise them. The men of letters sneered at them as fanatics. The wits cut jokes and invented smart names for them. The church shut her doors on them. The dissenters turned the cold shoulder on them. The ignorant mob persecuted them. But the movement of these few evangelists went on and made itself felt in every part of the land. Many were aroused and awakened to think about religion. Many were shamed out of their sins. Many were restrained and frightened at their own ungodliness. Many were gathered together and induced to profess a decided, hearty religion. Many were converted. Many who affected to dislike the movement were secretly provoked to emulation. The little sapling became a strong tree. The little rill became a deep, broad stream. The little spark became a steady, burning flame. A candle was lighted, of which we are now enjoying the benefit. The feeling of all classes in the land about religion and morality gradually assumed a totally different complexion. And all this under God was affected by a few unpatronized, unpaid adventurers. When God takes a work in hand, nothing can stop it. When God is for us, none can be against us. The instrumentality by which the spiritual reformers of the last century carried on their operations was one of the simplest description. It was neither more nor less than the old apostolic weapon of preaching. The sword which St. Paul wielded with such mighty effect when he assaulted the strongholds of heathenism 1800 years ago was the same sword by which they won their victories. To say, as some have done, that they neglected education and schools is totally incorrect. Wherever they gathered congregations, they cared for the children. To say, as others have done, that they neglected the sacraments is simply false. Those who make that assertion only expose their entire ignorance of the religious history of England 100 years ago. It would be easy to name men among the leading reformers of the last century, whose communicants might be reckoned by hundreds, and who honored the Lord's Supper more than 49 out of 50 clergymen in their day. But beyond doubt, preaching was their favorite weapon. They wisely went back to the first principles and took up apostolic plans. They held with St. Paul that a minister's first work is to preach the gospel.